tonight, and I just want to say right off the bat that I am honored to stand before you, a group of kindred spirits in my estimation who champion conservative values and conservative principles. And it's great. It's great to see a room full of people that we know we are all on the same team. Now, I do want to say, as a Republican that grew up in the traditional 4th District, this whole idea of Republican primaries is a whole new ball of wax for the traditional 4th District. We were always lucky to scrounge up the sacrificial lamb of the election cycle that we would flop out on the election altar every November. We were just glad if there was anybody that would run and put an R by their name, because traditionally in the traditional 4th District, and when I say that, I mean for decades and decades and decades, you just ran as a Democrat. And we've had to really work to promote the conservative message and to articulate the conservative message. And I'm a big believer that when you articulate the conservative message, we win. When we articulate it and when we communicate it well and with passion and with enthusiasm and with honesty and integrity, people respond to that. Because I believe at the end of the day, that is the Arkansas heartbeat. And just because of that long-standing Democrat heritage, that conservative message is coming out, and you're seeing more and more people start to listen to that, and then they respond, and they say, hey, you know what, deep down, I'm a Republican. And they're just becoming comfortable with that message and realizing that we're in this together and that we do represent that conservative principle. Let me tell you just a little bit about myself and why I'm running for the United States Congress. My name is Beth Anne Rankin. I was born in El Dorado. I'm a 7th generation Arkansan. All 7 generations have actually lived in Arkansas during our lives, and I have as well. I'm a lifelong Arkansan who spent 7 years working with Governor Mike Huckabee. And you know, Rex, it's funny, some people ask me if I'm offended when people bring up the fact that I was Miss Arkansas 1994, and I just laugh and say, I'm just glad anybody remembers. That's been a long time ago. It was about 17 years ago. Of course, someone accidentally introduced me once as Miss Arkansas 1976. And so, you know, it just wasn't one of those times I could correct him, and so I just let it slide. And after the meeting, someone came up to me and they said, wow, you are well preserved. I just said thank you very much and let him know what happened and all of that. But you know what, let me tell you why that matters. In Arkansas, that's a full-time job. You wake up each day and you represent the state of Arkansas. And for me, at the age of 23, I developed such a deep and passionate love for this state and the people who make her what she is, that is hard to manufacture, fabricate, or read in a textbook and try to duplicate. That's just something that comes from the deep part of who you are when you've had that rich experience of traveling all 75 counties. When you actually get out there at the age of 23 and you're all over the state of Arkansas meeting people, speaking in schools. I think that year I spoke in 158 school programs. I delivered those across the state. Was honored in the state legislature for doing that. The funny thing is, in the House of Representatives at the time, when I got the salutation for and the commendation by the Arkansas House of Representatives, guess who presented it to me back in the day in 1994? Can anyone guess? Mike Ross. So we've got that on camera. Congressman Ross, future Congressman Ross, presenting me a commendation for my work in public service, at that time civic service, and as an ambassador for the state of Arkansas. And of course, Mike Ross is who I ran against last year for the congressional seat in the 4th District in 2010. You know, when Rex mentioned the meeting two summers ago in 2010, I had just won the Republican nomination. And you have to understand, I was the underdog in that Republican primary. I knew it. I knew I was the underdog. And, you know, some folks were giving me a hard time about that. You know, they were like, oh, Beth Anne, are you sure you want to take this on, girl? You're kind of the underdog here. And, you know, you're taking on the blue dog. You're taking on the blue dog in this race. And, of course, then I was the underdog in the Republican primary as well. I won that. And what a blessing. I carried 27 of 29 counties in the Republican primary. So I think people appreciate those lifelong Arkansas roots that are real and deep-seated. I think that means something to people. But I went on in the general election, and I finally got fed up listening to this underdog stuff, taking on Congressman Ross, and I finally said at the meeting something along these lines of saying, look, I may be an underdog, but I would rather be an underdog than a blue dog any day, because we're interested in being the top dog and sending a conservative to the United States Congress. And I think people responded to that because they wanted to see someone who would stand up, face a giant, take it on. I've read the polls. I knew what the chances of having a good fundraising year was going to be. I ran anyway, because that's just the way I was raised. I was raised on the Rankin family farm, a cattle Angus and Brangus farm down on the outskirts of Columbia County in Magnolia. I'm still very, very close to the Rankin family. Very proud to be a part of that family. It's my deepest blessing from God. But let me just go through a couple of the top issues. I'd love to take a few question and answer tonight before we wrap up. And just know that if you're not the stand up and ask a question in front of people, I will hang around tonight for as long as y'all can stand it. So if you have a question you want to ask me afterward, or just an issue that you feel like is important, please let me know that. First of all, I'm running for Congress because I am deeply concerned about the future of the United States of America. When I launched my campaign on August 29th of last year, I said we have a very clear choice. We have a choice of two futures. And ladies and gentlemen, we are headed down the path of one future that is recklessly similar to the European cradle-to-grave nanny state. And if we don't put the brakes on this train, we are going to run right off that cliff, and we're close to it. Let me put this in perspective. When I launched my campaign in 2010, we were at a 10.4 or 10.5 national debt. Boy, it's hard to stand here barely 2 years later and talk about the good old days when it was just 10.4 or 10.5 trillion dollar national debt. We're pushing 15.3 and 15.4 trillion dollars now in 2 short years. This is insanity. I was upset enough about that in 2010 at a $10 trillion, a $10.5 trillion national debt. And we have now gotten on this path at such a perilous pace that if we don't throw the brakes on fast, we are in another, if we get into this a few more years down the line, and if we have not reversed course financially for this country, we will not recognize the United States of America, period. We just won't. And as a small business owner, as an entrepreneur, as the daughter of an economist, my father was an economist and a business professor for 35 years at Southern Arkansas University. He's now the president of the university. But I grew up learning about the free enterprise system. I grew up learning about the free market. I grew up learning about Milton Friedman and reading Free to Choose and supply-side economics and how important it is for people to have personal responsibility and to take a dream and have the freedom and the liberty in the United States of America to pursue that dream without the government choking the life out of your vision and not even making you want to just throw your hands up and not even try anymore. Of course, I teased my dad that that's why I went to school in the 8th grade and on the playground I wasn't popular with any of the kids because I was talking about Milton Friedman and supply-side economics. I ran Contra Affair in the Ronald Reagan years with Gorbachev, and I mean, that stuff fascinated me. But what amazing building blocks now that I look back and I realize those seeds were planted into my life and into my heart for a reason. And if our country has ever needed somebody who understands the free market of the United States of America, my friends, they need it now. They need it now. We need a dose of that in the United States Congress. I'm of the impression we have too many lawyers in the United States Congress today. We don't need to send any more. We need people with real-world experience, people who have built a business, people who understand what that's like, trying to meet that budget, trying to live by a budget, trying to plan for a budget. So how do we fix the runaway debt and deficit in this country? Number one, we need a balanced budget amendment. I started talking about a balanced budget amendment in 2010. And one of the reasons I love the balanced budget amendment is I was in Governor Huckabee's administration with a Democrat House and a Democrat Senate and a Republican governor. Now, would you think you'd stand a chance anywhere in balancing your budget with those kinds of dynamics in place? He was one of the few Republican governors since Reconstruction. We only had Rockefeller and White and then Governor Huckabee. But you know what? They did it. They did it every single time despite differences because the Arkansas Constitution demands that they do it. That's not the most fun thing in the world to do. But the Arkansas Constitution, thank God, some leaders in the past sat down and gave us here in the state of Arkansas one of the most treasured gifts that you can give any future generation, and that is the stipulation that any future leader will balance the budget of a given public entity. And I believe if we have ever needed that, then right now we need a federal version of Arkansas's Balanced Budget Amendment. Now in Arkansas, we use the tool of the Revenue Stabilization Act, the RSA. That's the vehicle through which we are able to do this every single budget cycle that we go through. We are in desperate need of a federal version of the Revenue Stabilization Act in the United States Congress. Why do I think that's possible? Ronald Reagan wanted it in the 80s. They refused to give it to him. We wanted it again in the 1990s. You don't think your vote matters? You don't think your congressman matters? It failed by one vote. One. If we had just one more congressman, if just one more senator had the guts to stand up and fight for a balanced budget amendment, we wouldn't be in the wreck of a mess we're in tonight. We wouldn't be. It wouldn't have been legal for them to get us in this mess. And keep this in mind, y'all, too, when we're talking about a $15.3 trillion national debt. Remember how clever and gimmicky the government is? They don't even count the debt they owe themselves. Like all that messy little money they've borrowed from the Social Security Fund. They don't count that. That doesn't go into the calculations. So these gimmicks, it's time they end it. I support an act that Martha Roby from Alabama has presented. It's called the Honest Budget Act. And it's time that our congressmen and our legislators from Capitol Hill started coming home and telling us the truth. Like all this when they come home and brag about these spending cuts that they do, when in reality, yeah, y'all are shaking your heads. It's not a spending cut at all. It's a cut in a projected growth that's automatic because they build it in that way. This little gimmicky thing they call baseline budgeting. We've got to make them stop that. We don't do that. There's not a business in America that operates that way and assumes that next year's budget is going to be X number of percent higher than this year's budget. We've got to turn back the tide of the use it or lose it mentality, and we all know about that. We've all seen the scrambling that takes place just a few days before that fiscal budget is due in this massive panic of spend it, spend it, spend it. If we don't spend all that money, we won't get the same allocation next year. There's a lot of mindset change that needs to take place here. And it can happen. You know, don't fall into that trap of thinking, oh, you know, this is just 1% or this is just 2%. We're talking 1 and 2% of a $3.5 trillion budget. That's a lot of money. 1% of that, 2% of that, 3% of that, before long you're talking about some real money that can significantly put us on a path to fiscal restoration in the United States of America, and we have got to have it. It is not an option any longer. As a matter of fact, do you know they've already coined the new generation coming up, you know, Generation X, which kind of irritated me, you know, because in algebra, the letter X is just a variable. You can just fill in the blank. It's kind of this or it's kind of that. And I thought, you know what, my generation, we've got to step up. We've got to learn what we believe and be defined by our principles. And I think we're starting to do that. I think that's an important thing. But then you had Generation Y, and then you've got the millennials that are coming up. You know what they're calling the next generation? I'm not making this up. They've already termed them the debt payers. Now that doesn't just make you catch your breath. Jonelle mentioned she's going to be a grandmother. What are we leaving to the next generation in America? Way worse off than the way that our ancestors gave it to us. And we've got to reverse that trend. Now, another thing that I'm hearing is tax reform. I was so thrilled when I got to come up, Rex, and hear Steve Forbes speak at the Fort Smith Chamber Banquet. I was really, really excited. Y'all have to remember, you know, I grew up talking this stuff, so I love that. I remember when he ran for president back in the 90s, I got to talk with him after the event was over, and I told him, I said, Mr. Forbes, I said, I hope you don't mind. I said, you used a phrase back in the 90s that I've kind of merged into my speeches. And he said, well, what is it? And I said, well, when you talk about the current IRS code, which, by the way, everybody, is 72,000 pages. 72,000. Can you even imagine that? Now compare that to the Holy Bible that has about 1,300. And that's God's plan to save the entire world. 72,000 pages for a complicated IRS tax code. So I told him, I said, I loved your phrase, and so repeat it to me. And I said, all right. I said, you got up there and you said, it is time we eliminated the IRS tax code. We don't need to just eliminate it. We need to kill it, knife it, stake it, burn it, bury it, and hope it never rises to see the light of day again. And he just loved that, and I said, well, I hope you don't mind, after 15 years, can I get your official permission to keep using that in my speeches? And he said, go have fun with that one. And I said, but it's true. We got to quit just talking about it. We've got to actually do that. We've got to actually simplify the tax code. We've got to actually accomplish that. And I think that's an important thing for us to move forward, make progress on that. Third thing, and this is a significant difference between the 2010 campaign and the 2012 campaign, regulatory reform. Wow, I am hearing this from without exception, every business owner that I talk to. No matter if they just have one employee or if they are the sole employee of their business, which, by the way, is one of the fastest growing businesses in America right now. It's the single employee business, the person that went out and created their own job. I say we need to talk about that in our high schools and our colleges a little more. We're so focused on find a job, get a job, find a job, get a job, find a job, get a job. We need to talk about creating a job. We need to talk about creating a job. What can you do? What can I do to actually create a job, even if it's just my job? Just your job, just one job. Because that's the backbone of America, the dreamers, the dream makers. We've got to be sure we've got a government that creates an environment that allows those dreams and that vision to flourish. And I think that's an important thing. We've got to keep moving that forward. So regulatory reform. I just saw this statistic the other day. Under the present administration, there are now 109 what they call major regulations. Major regulations, 109 coming down the pipe. And we wonder why our economy's not moving. Well, let me tell you something. We're not sick from the disease anymore. We're sick from the cure. We're sick from the cure. This has been such a heavy-handed government solution. And guess what? America isn't in the business of government solutions. We need citizen solutions. We need private sector solutions. We need for the government to respect freedom once again in this country. And I think that is critical. So, balanced budget amendment, we've got to rein in federal spending. We've got to get tax reform, simplification of the IRS tax code. I know we could have an animated debate even tonight over how you best do that. Let's have the conversation. Let's get those ideas out on the table. And regulatory reform. Those are some of the major ones. You know, I tell people, even if you love big government, we can't afford it. We can't afford it. The conversation shouldn't even get to the point of whether you love big government or not. We can't afford this government. This government is breaking the backs of the American people. And it's time that the states reminded the federal government that the states created the feds, not the other way around. That this federal government's not behaving that way. So those are some of my top issues. Let me wrap this up by saying I'm pro-life. I made my first pro-life statement 23 years ago. I love the sanctity of life. I love the culture of life. And America is moving more and more in that direction. Through 4D technology, we're seeing life at earlier stages than we ever have before. And folks are growing less and less comfortable with abortion on demand. And so I think that that's something that we can speak about in a beautiful way that packages that where we understand the sanctity and the love for life that the Conservative Party stands for. Secondly, y'all mentioned the concealed carry class. I have my concealed carry license. Don't even ask. I never say whether I have it on me or not, but it is a fun thing to talk about, and I always encourage people, go exercise your right, your Second Amendment right. I'm a proud gun owner. Both of my brothers are in the Arkansas National Guard. My older brother's an Iraq War veteran. And we take those freedoms seriously. We take those rights seriously. And don't even kid yourself, the anti-gun lobby is alive and well in the United States of America. Keep your eye right now on the United Nations, because right now they're coming in through the back door, through something called the Small Arms Treaty, where they would try to ban smaller arms, handhelds, that sort of thing, globally, and they want the United States of America to bow their knee to the throne of the United Nations. And let me just say this quickly. I can assure you I'm probably the only, I haven't asked my two opponents, but I've been to the United Nations, and I've stood there, and from the minute you walk in the door until the minute you leave, they bash America. They bash America. And that just irritated the tar out of me, and I was still in my 20s. And then I left that compound, and I turned around, and there you are in Manhattan near the East River. You walk across the street, and suddenly you're back on American turf, because they love when you walk in the door, the first thing they say to you is, you have now left the United States of America. And that burned me up too. We gave them the dirt. That irritated me, for them to rub that in our face, that it no longer belonged to us. We're footing the bill. So many countries we send foreign aid to, turn around on the United Nations, vote against everything we try to accomplish across this globe for peace, freedom, liberty, and the justice of humankind. That's not right. We've got to have that conversation, and I think that's a common sense conversation to have. And it's time we got back to some of those principles. So I want you to know I am passionate about this. I know not everybody in here lives in the 4th District, in the new 4th District, but as large as the 4th District is, what I do know is everybody in this room knows somebody. I know that y'all know a lot of somebodies who live in the 4th District, and I will tell you this. 90% of my financial support is coming from inside the state of Arkansas. I said in 2010 that I wanted to be a people's candidate. And I know that I'm not a DC darling, but I know that I don't want to be. I want to be a people's candidate. I said that in 2010. I'm putting my money literally where my mouth is. I'm raising the money inside the state of Arkansas. That matters to me. And I think that still matters to Arkansas. So I would humbly ask that you all would consider my campaign. If you know people in the 4th District, please put in a good word for me. Send a postcard. Make a phone call. Send a bumper sticker to somebody. In the 4th District, I'm convinced this is a neighbor-to-neighbor election. And this Republican primary will be won neighbor to neighbor. And I think that that is the style that I want to be known for. And if we can do that in this Republican primary, we will set that precedent. We will set that precedent that we are able to keep the control of the 4th District of Arkansas right here in Arkansas. And I think that's an important thing. The last thing I want to say is for those of you who are in the 4th District, when you go to vote, you're going to have a lot of options. And as a lifelong Arkansan, I'm still in shock that that's happened. I mean, it's an amazing thing to see. But I hope when you go in there to vote, that you'll see the list of names, but that you will see one name that stood up in 2010 when it wasn't trendy, and it wasn't popular, and it wasn't the thing to do, and we didn't have great polling numbers that prompted me to get in the race, or donors standing in line ready to throw money at me when I got in the race, but I did it anyway, because I wanted the conservative voice to be heard. And we went on, after sweeping the Republican primary, we went on in the general election, even though we were outspent 5-1, and out of the 5 most populated 4th District counties, we won 4 of them, even against Mike Ross. And he spent $3 million. And out of the 5 most populated counties, we won 4 of those. My message to you is if I win this Republican primary and advance to the general, that's where we start. We start, and then we build on that. And I would venture to say that I hope you would see that I would be the best candidate to send to the general election. I am so proud to be here tonight. I hope you sense my enthusiasm, my passion as I apply for this job. I thank you so much for giving me the opportunity. Rex, do we have time for questions, or do I need to wrap it up? I'll take a couple of questions. Yes, sir.
Beth